Well, if you can hear it in the background, I've had a steam train running from my interests that some of you probably know about. I hope this little video might help those who weren't here today be able to talk about sanctifying versus actual grace. Today we talked a little bit, or heard a little bit about in the symbol on session 1, or session 9, my brain is not working on time here, about Mary being receiving a sanctifying grace of being immaculately conceived. And we talked about a sanctifying grace and what it is. So very briefly, sanctifying grace. And what is grace? Grace is God's effective work in my life. And I have to tell you, those of you that are looking at this, and you see this right here, it looks perfect. But for me, when I look at it, it's coming in backwards. So I'm just hoping it's coming in correctly for you. Anyway, God's effective work in our life. God does it. He makes it work. He's able to make it happen. And so it's not just, one person said, well, grace is a blessing. It's God's favor. Both true. But when we start to think of someone saying, oh, it's nice, you're such a blessing. Well, what does that mean? And we don't have to have a good answer. But if we start thinking about, hey, would you do a favor for me? We start to get the idea of what God's favor is upon a person. When the angel says, Hail Mary, full of grace, it really means, hey, I am making you full of grace. There's not room for anything else, not room for sin. And so we get the idea of God's grace, God doing something effective in her life, God removing all stain of sin from her at the very moment of her conception. What a wonderful gift that she received. Now you hear in the symbol on session 9 what that does and have it drawn out in more detail. But as we talked about today, sanctifying grace. So if we were to contrast sanctifying versus actual grace. Sanctifying, it's something that I receive on a habitual way. I live in it. I'm just in sanctifying grace. God's effective work in my life all the time. How is this different from, like, say, actual grace? Well, an actual grace would be something like a grace of conversion. I'm struggling with some sin, and God presents me with the ability to overcome that sin. I'm working with Him. He's not doing it in competition with me, but He's not doing it without me. And that's really key. God's grace is our cooperation with it, not simply God forcing Himself on us and keeping us out of the equation or out of the loop of involvement. I hope this helps. I hope this also will fit on our remind notice. Thank you. See you soon.